that all over the world, parents are conscientious. They're worried about their kids. They're bringing them nightly fruit. They're watching out for their grades. But in America, you have to demonstrate publicly and loudly that conscientiousness, that helicopter hyper focus on your kid. Say hypervigilance has become a calling card of American parents.
I know being child-free doesn't seem like I'm qualified to talk on this, but as somebody who used to be a nanny, who has watched firsthand what my sister, what my closest friends have gone through, and now the women I know in France where I live, what they go through in comparison in terms of motherhood, because this is a parenthood thing, but it's really about mothers. And not just mothers, it's about racism and classism as well. And capitalism and all the ism, all the things. It all plays out on mothers. And if there's one thing I'm certain of at this point in my life is that, all of those things, racism, misogyny, patriarchy, all the things is the foundation of American society. And so it's in everything. And the way it plays out with mothers is holding them accountable for literally everything that happens to everybody. It's the mother's fault. And then also a competition, right? Everything is competitive in the United States. Is one thing I've learned by moving away is that, oh my God, we're so competitive about everything, even parenting. And then we also do not have a social safety net that allows for childcare, healthcare, all the things that mothers and parents need to raise children. And so a lot of these children, especially in my generation, Gen X, were known for just being like latchkey kids. We just did everything on our own. We had no supervision. And yet a lot of that was good. Go watch that video, by the way. It's amazing. I'm going to link it. That's one of my mutuals. I love her content. I learn something new every day from her. I want to talk about a couple things from a bigger lens, and then I'm going to use a couple of examples from my own life experience to make my point. So I read this book a few years ago, Small Animals, and this really opened my eyes to how much we police mothers and how much parents in general, but especially mothers, are under this spotlight all the time. Everyone's watching them. I mean, the United States is such a police state, so it makes sense that we police each other. And if anybody knows American history, white women especially are known for policing everybody, especially when it comes to Black, Indigenous, and other women of color. We police them with a whole system of power behind us, but we police each other too. So this article kind of summarizes the book because I can't go read the whole book again to make my points. In this book, she makes the point of she talks a lot about this book about what is danger and what is just perceived danger that's a part of the American psyche. She also talks about because a lot of Gen Xers ended up growing up and because we had so little supervision and lots of crazy stuff happened to us as a result of that. A lot of my essay experiences were because I was left. And anyway, y'all know my history if you follow me by now. But I also really, really feel bad for my nieces and stuff who do not have all the freedom that I had to just ride their bikes all day, So what she talks about is that a lot of the Gen Xers grew up and became the opposite extreme. And also we grew up with the milk cartons, right? With all these kidnapped kids on our milk cartons every day. And the man in the van, right? And our culture's obsession with kidnapping and stuff. Not that that wasn't happening. Of course it was. We just became very paranoid. I mean, needles in our Halloween candy? I don't think that was ever proven to be a thing. We were raised in this huge culture of fear. Probably because we weren't really being taken care of because whatever, all the reasons. So she ended up getting in a lot of trouble because she left her kid in the car for 2 minutes, literally. It wasn't hot out. There was none of the things that, And after that, her whole book is her reckoning with this and trying to figure out how do you deal with other people policing your parents? She was waiting to see if she's going to be charged for neglect by the police. Again, I have a personal story I want to share about this in a minute. But as a parent, as a mother, every mistake, every miscalculation, every single thing, you feel it's like the Truman Show in the U.S. With mothers, everybody's watching. And I know this because I was a nanny. And I just remember being every time I go to the park, I was I'm not even a mother. I don't even have that pressure as a mother. But as a nanny, I was oh my God, I was so afraid of what everyone thought of me all the time because people were watching what I was doing all the time. They were commenting on it. I literally, one of the kids had a heart. He was coughing on a pretzel and I knew he wasn't choking. I have a wilderness first responder. I know what choking looks like. My dad choked in front of me on family vacation. I knew that was choking and I did the Heimlich maneuver on him. I know about choking. And yet when I was in a situation with a child in public, all these people were you should do Heimlich. And I'm no, that's not what he needs. Anyway, I ended up having to take him to the hospital just so that I didn't get sued. He was never choking. But this is what parenting in America is like. It's terrifying. And I'm not even a parent. I'm just saying this as somebody who took care of children part-time as a job. Why mothers are so judgmental and competitive is one of the big things she talks about. Motherhood has become a battleground in which prejudice and class resentment can be waged without ever admitting that's what we're doing. She brings in examples of, there was one woman who got criticized for letting her 9-year-old ride the subway alone. Another woman, a Black single mother, who was interrogated by the police for allowing her daughter to play at a well-supervised park less than a mile from work while she was working. It is impossible to make it a crime to take your eyes off your child without also making it a crime to be poor. So all the things that I'm talking about are even worse if you are poor, especially if you are poor and Black, Indigenous, or another woman of color, especially if you are a Black woman. And we know what happens to them when they get interrogated by the police. So one of the examples I want to use is that not only do we are people paranoid about what people are thinking of them and watching them and calling the police on them and their parenting in general. But I believe, this is my personal opinion, that a lot of people with a lot of unresolved trauma from their own childhoods then become like vigilantes. Because one of my very close friends had like diaper rash all the time, was at like daycare. And one of the women who worked there called Child Protective Services saying that she thought she was being So then the Child Protective Services and the police show up at my friend's house, make the little girl, 2-year-old, get examined to prove she wasn't getting And of course, there was no evidence. Interviewed the parents, traumatized the child, and put that whole family at risk because somebody was like, So it's so complicated. Because yes, there's so many kids who are being abused and just fall through the cracks. And there's other kids who are being traumatized by a lot of the people who are policing everybody. It's so complicated. And then in addition to that, there's like the competition. One of my friends could not breastfeed. Tried so hard, used the tube, like this tube that held a bottle here and teeny tiny tube to try to trick the baby into thinking the baby was drinking, like tried everything, wanted so bad to have that connection with her baby. And baby was crying all the time. It just couldn't get fed enough. And what it came down to is that she was getting shamed. Felt so much shame from the other women who were like, breast is best, breast is best. And shame other women who can't produce milk or a lot of it or enough to feed the baby. Like all the shaming. Do you make homemade sweet potatoes or is yours canned? No, it's like the perfect intersection of all of the things gets played out so much on mothers. So when I came over here and saw the relationship between the parents and children, I was like, what? Like every time I hang out with my nephew and my niece, I am on edge because I'm like, who's watching them? I'll be in the other room playing and I'm like, oh my God. I go and watch them because I'm like, who's gonna watch them? Like but when I'm there, I've had to stop myself. I'm like, no, Melanie, just like, it's fine. Because I have been conditioned to think that has to have eyes on the child all the time. Watch the child. They're gonna get kidnapped. They're gonna die. I mean, I can't believe, the people here have like glass tables with sharp corners. The kids, little kids at the dinner table will be like playing with like a corkscrew and like use like glass, not sippy cups. And knives. And I'm like, it's so hard to sit through meals watching small children acting like adults. So there's this like crazy fear culture that is based absolutely on consumerism and capitalism and people making billions of dollars off of moms who are terrified something's going to happen to their children and also terrified of being judged for not buying all the things and being worried all the time. So like even if you don't want to be hypervigilant and like crazy, everybody reinforces it. Like I have so much anxiety when I hang out with children over here because I'm like, and that's all because of the way I was taught in the US to think of children, be obsessed with fear, to have this helicopter. God, I'm not saying that all those problems I just mentioned in the US are not here too. Of course they are. But things seem to be like really extreme and obvious in the US. They exist elsewhere, but there's just something about like everything's extreme in the US. When you think about our history, the puritanical mindset, the binary, good, bad, safe, dangerous, the violence, historically, the fact that everything is about violence and money, and the whole government is literally like what we're known as around the world is like the bad people. It all makes sense. I don't know how you deal with all this pressure. I don't.